Welcome back to Scene. I'm your host, Diona Richards, and joining us today is Dar'shun Kendrick. Dar'shun, it's great to have you.
Thank you for having me on this early Friday morning. It's Friday, y'all.
And it is very early. It is. It's early, but Dar'shun is a very busy woman, so we had to do this at the crack of dawn. Um, So Darshun is the founder of Darshun Speaks. It is a corporate law firm focused on getting startup companies and growing companies investor ready. In addition to being a corporate lawyer and a securities lawyer, Darshun is also a 7-time House of Representative member for the state of Georgia, as well as a handful of other ventures that she's involved in. Darshun is just like a real businesswoman. So we are honored to be in your presence this morning.
Man, your check is in the mail, Deanna. Your check is in the mail. Anything I can do to be helpful.
Absolutely. So, Darshun, one of the things that you specialize in is getting investor ready, right? And so, what does that mean? What does that look like from the legal side, being investor ready?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of that means making sure that you have the right infrastructure in place, making sure that you have the right team with the applicable agreements in place, making sure that you understand where the different percentages in your company are so you can put them on a cap table and put them in a document. And one of the unique things about my firm is that I get to combine legal consulting, so getting all the legal documents correct, with my MBA and my background as a registered investment advisor. And I also do some arbitration for FINRA. So it is a holistic approach to saying at the very beginning of a coaching session, listen, I know exactly what it is that can get you in trouble and how to get ready so that investors say yes, because I combine all those sort of skills and talents together. So we go through about 5 different sessions that we take through to get companies investor ready. We go through foundation, framework, financials, future thinking, and future and forward thinking. So we take those 5 sessions and we really combine the legal expertise, the business expertise, the investing expertise, and make sure at the end of that coaching session, that 5 part coaching session, that a company has a physical document that they can share with their team that says, this is the roadmap to getting closer to a yes for an investor. You don't have to worry about the legal stuff because we take care of the legal stuff so that you can focus on building your brand and getting closer to that yes from that investor, which we know can take a while to do, but we try to break down as many barriers and answer as many questions as possible through that coaching program so that you can get closer in time and in proximity to getting a yes from that investor.
That's great. Thank you. I just want to point out, okay, so did y'all peep that? In addition to being a JD corporate lawyer, securities lawyer, she also mentioned I have an MBA, so I can tell you the business side. I'm FINRA regulated, so I know all the is powerhouse. But you mentioned one of the second points that you mentioned is making sure they have the right team in place. So how important is it if you are a startup founder to have the right team in place? What does the right team look like? And what happens if you're a solo founder?
So I just finished over the summer doing a 7-part series on being a masterclass on being what I call capital conversations. So if you look up Darshun Speaks on YouTube, you can see this class. It's essentially the same thing that I'm going to tell you now. So the number one reason that people invest in companies, or retail investors or institutional investors invest in company, is the team. Because no matter how great your idea is, if you don't have people, actual people, not technology, but people to actually execute it, it doesn't matter if you have the next Uber. It doesn't matter if you have the next Facebook. It doesn't matter if you have any company that you know of that's well known right there, because you need people to actually execute it, no matter how great your idea is. And so having that team is number one. And a lot of people think when I say team, I mean like founders or people on staff. No, I mean people that are around you. They can be in a paid capacity or an advisory capacity, or just somebody that's a friend of yours that you can call up that has that particular expertise. So when I say team, don't think that I mean a formal team. It's just people that are around you that you can bounce ideas off of, that can help you move forward. Now, some of those people are going to be paid, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the whole team has to be paid. So one of the things that I say on my YouTube class is, obviously you want a good attorney. Obviously I'm biased because there's so many traps that you can get into very early on, and you don't want making one legal mistake to cost you being able not to raise capital. And I've seen that. The second thing is an accountant. And the reason that you want the accountant and the attorney is, as a business owner, startup or growing, anytime you make a business decision, it's going to have one of two consequences. It's going to either have a legal consequence or a financial one, or sometimes both. So those are sort of non-negotiable people that you need to have on your team. Again, they don't need to be on payroll, but they need to be somebody that you can reach out to when the occasion arises. The other thing to have on your team is really business people that I would say are in that industry. And, if you look at a lot of companies, they will have a board of advisors. Some of these people are just people that they know, or people they can call into. It doesn't have to be anything really formal. It's just the ability to pick up the phone and have a conversation, right?
Right.
Doesn't have to be anything formal or anything paid. But having those board of advisors specifically to your industry are like solid gold, right? Because they've been there, done that, and they can help you not make the same mistakes that maybe they made, or somebody that they knew made. And less mistakes that you make, the closer you are to getting that yes from an investor. And some other ones that I mentioned on the YouTube masterclass is you can always add sort of like a formal business advisor, maybe somebody who their whole sort of objective is to go out and maybe get you introductions to investors, or to drum up more customer demand so that your sales can go up. So that is one option as well. But for people who are solo, to answer your last question, all those people don't have to be founders. Everybody I just mentioned don't have to be founders. So you can do it as a solo. Do investors typically like to see more than one founder? Yes. But if your other team is, your outside team is strong enough and has the expertise that that they need, that can make up for being a solo founder. So team is like number one, the most important thing. That's one of the things that we start with during our first session on building out your foundation during our 5-part session. It's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate how you package this together, the 5 F's, because it seems like it's a pretty simple roadmap to follow. Now, you talked about making sure one of the things that's important to you is ensuring that all of the legal ducks are in a row, so that you don't find yourself in a bind, in a hiccup, that you've had some kind of issue legally where investors have to turn you down. In your experience, what does that look like? What is something that could happen with the paperwork, or legally, or with the organization, that investors have to either put you on pause or walk away?
Well, I'm actually dealing with this currently as with a client right now. So, one of the things is not having sort of very clear terms in your operating agreement or your bylaws or things like that. A lot of times people will download a Zoom document or download something on Office Depot. And I'm like, that works. Let me say this. Downloading form documents works if you are a new business with no money and all you're doing is doing business, right? So you look for a vendor agreement or something like that. Because my parents are entrepreneurs and they had to do the same thing. So I understand the cost.
Right.
So when you start soliciting investors, that's a whole different corporate area.
Right.
Where downloading an investor document, off of Office Depot is not going to cut it, because the terms in the industry and the regulations get updated so much. There's no way those documents online can keep up.
Right.
And so One of the things that I tell people is, make sure that you have those operating agreements, those initial ones, have them as best as they can, so that these savvy investors, when they look at it, they say that this is a good worded document that accounts for, being able to receive investor funds, right? So
Right.
that document is probably the one of the ones that I'm dealing with right now. The other document would be what we call, it's many names to it. I call it a business plan on steroids. Some people in private equity and venture capital call it the Bible. Some people call it a prospectus. Some people call it a
Hmm.
private placement memorandum. It all does the same thing, right?
Right.
Essentially, it's a business plan. It's a roadmap that you're telling your investors, this is our financials. This is how you're going to get your money back. This is the team, as well as some other stuff. And what I see is a lot of people will, one, either not have that document. And for most raises, you don't need that document. But I
Hmm.
say it's so not smart to have that document, because a lot of people think that document is for the investor. That document is to protect the company,
Right. Right.
because all an investor needs to do is report you to a federal agency or to a
Mm.
state agency and say, founders so and so with company said this, and now you're under investigation. Why, when
Mm.
all you need to do is have a document that you can say, hey, we submitted this to you, you received it, and you read it, and be able to
Right.
point and say, no, we didn't say that in this document, or yes, we did say this in this document. And so that document that you present to investors is to protect the company,
Right.
the issuing company, not to just present to the investors, which a lot of companies think. They're like, oh, well, I don't need it because the investor said I don't need this document. That
Right.
document is not for the investor. That document is to protect you. So even
Hmm.
though it's not required, it is not smart at all not to have that. We call it an offering document. That's what we call
Right.
all of them, just offering documents, to have that in place before you raise your first dollar.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the founding documents and then the offering document, which is something that we go through during the framework of our 5-part session, is something that really is the guide for how you deal with investors and keep the team on focus, as far as who you're targeting, how you're going to raise the money, what's the plan after you raise the money,
Hmm.
types of things.
Yeah, and I mean, that's great because I was talking to someone else and we discussed about how, especially in the age of like social media, right? When you're talking to these startups and these newfound companies and either growing companies, you want things to happen so quickly because it looks like everyone around you is growing quickly. But there's a back end that needs to be taken care of, right? Behind the scenes, the legal portion is what's going to help carry you through. And so, when a founder comes to you, what stage do they need to be in to be ready for the first 5 steps, right? Are they coming to you fresh, saying, here's my idea, I need seed money, or are they coming to you, they're established, they have clients, they've generated revenue? What does that look like?
So usually it's the latter. And the reason it's the latter is there is immense value in going through this 5-part program, because
Mhm.
literally you are far beyond any 10-week incubator that you can go
Right.
through, or any MBA class, because you're getting all these skills and stuff sort of compressed in a very linear session. So at the end of the day, you have this written guide and you have a better understanding, just as yourself and as a company. So usually the companies are 6 to 12 months out before raising their first capital, and they are post revenue, and
Hmm.
that's the only way that they really see the value, unfortunately, in
Right.
having all these things in place. Startups are just in a different mindset. They're trying
Right.
to acquire clients. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do. They're still trying to transition from the corporate job, so they don't quite understand the value that's placed on the pricing and the time commitment that is needed. Now, will we work with startups? Absolutely. But we don't tend to see a lot of them that can make that connection at that stage.
Hmm. Yeah, that's helpful. That's good to know. So it's better to have gotten out of that start. And that's a good point because startups are kind of new, they're fresh, they're babies, right? They're growing,
Mhm.
they're figuring things out, they're still getting their legs. Um, and so what does it look like once you've gone through future financial foundation framework? forward thinking. Now I'm ready. I'm ready to get some money for this company, right? I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to go to the next step. Maybe hiring a team that we can pay. What does it typically look like when you're raising funds? What's the time frame?
So actually doing the foundation portion of it. So this is sort of a very hands-on coaching program, right?
Good.
During the foundation portion, we go through this whole thing about who needs to be on your team based on your industry and your company. And so the goal is for you to be working on doing sort of that hiring, if you can, doing that process. Because remember, the goal is after this 5-part session is for you to be investor ready. So you have everybody in place, right? We want as soon as you graduate from this program, I am ready. I am ready as I'm going to be, right? So we're doing some things during the coaching sessions. But after the coaching session, one of the wonderful things that I love is now I can actually, connect people who have went through this program with actual broker dealers, and I don't do direct introductions to investors because I have a securities license, and it just gets regulatory. But I know people who know people, right? And so I can make those introductions and know that I can 100% stand behind this company. Why? Because I trained them and we went through the whole program. So I have no qualms about saying this is the next big thing that you need to take a look at. And at the end of the day, they still have to take those investor relations and nurture them and things like that. So all I can do is the introduction, but it won't be for a lack of an introduction or lack of being investor ready, because I've done that part, and now it's on for you to take it from there. So as far as like timelines and things like that, that's in the hands of the company once I do my job. And that really just depends on, any number of factors, the capital market environment we're in the United States. It depends on the industry. Certain industries are just going to be more attractive than other ones at any given time. It depends on the founders and the team and how strong that is. Like I said, that's the number one reason that investors invest in companies. I mean, it's going to depend on a lot of factors. But the point that I try to make is, once you go through this program, then you are significantly closer to that investor saying yes than if you didn't. So the time period should be shorter.
Okay, great. Let me ask you this. So in your experience, and your definition, what does a successful company look like? A successful growing company look like? And what have you noticed the difference between a company that is successful by your definition and maybe a company who is not as successful? What's the difference in the founder and in the team?
Successful to me is growth. So if year one, you make $20,000, year two, I'm looking for you to make more than $20,000. It's just that simple. It's math. Like numbers, people can give these sort of theoretical explanations about what successful means. I am very straight, direct, and to the point. If your numbers go up, to me, that is success, because I can show to investors this is a growing company, right? And it's as simple as that. And it doesn't even matter the amount of growth. I mean, some investors will like to see exponential growth, 10x or things like that. But to me, as long as you are growing, even if it's by $1,000 a year, that's still growth. And then it's my job to come in and say, how do we make that more than $1,000 a year? Because at the end of this coaching program, I need you to be as attractive to investors as possible. And $1,000, even though it's growth, is probably not going to get you there. So that's what growth, means to me. And just to contrast that with your next question, unsuccessful companies are companies who are either stagnant, so, making around the same amount, or, there's a dip in their in their revenue. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to be successful because things come up. It doesn't mean that the next year, they're not going to be back on track. It just means that they are not in a position this year necessarily to solicit investors. So they need to go back and, sort of give it another year.
Right. And so when if they come to you and they say, it's been a year, I haven't been successful, maybe I'm not investor ready. What does that follow up look like in the relationship between you and that kind of sort of student, right? That founder.
Mm-hmm. So then what we do then is we still go through the 5-part session, but then when we start to talk about foundation and framework, we're going to spend most of our time on those sessions. So these sessions are depending on the company and the industry, they can have varying lengths of time in which we have the sessions. But if a founder, comes to me and they are not seeing that growth, we can still get them in, investor ready, but we're going to spend a lot more time in those first 2 sessions on foundation and framework, because everything else is going to come from those 2. So we're going to spend a lot more time in the foundation and framework, as opposed to the other 3. And we're going to be doing some changes and some things and referring you to partners in those first 2 sessions. So these sessions are meant to be 6 months to a year, right? Because that's the lead time that I say you have to give me to get investor ready, because it just takes a while. So in case of your scenario, if we're trying to get somebody, investor ready in a year, we're probably going to spend half of that time concentrating on those first two sessions.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. So if I am a growing company, right, what are 3 things that you would tell me not to do, not to focus on, and then 3 things that you would absolutely have me pushing for?
Let's see, 3 things not to focus on. Well, this is just my recommendation for life in general, but goes back to something that you mentioned before, which is do not compare yourself, because it will drive you nuts, right? Especially if you're in the same industry, especially if you're on social media, and you start making mistakes whenever you start comparing yourself, because you'll say, oh, well, they did that, let me go do that. That doesn't mean that is right for you. So stay away from comparing yourself. It's okay to get inspiration and ideas and advice, but do not compare yourself to the point that you are, varying your business strategy to match somebody who just, got $1 million investment. That never works in life. It never works in business, right? Because everybody is individual. The second thing I would say is not to do, is to not spend money unnecessarily that doesn't have a return on investment. So, one of the things that I love about my firm, and I tell people, is you don't have to pay for my fancy coffee maker. You don't have to pay for my wooden furniture, my mahogany wood furniture that you see at most law firms. You don't have to pay for the rent in Buckhead, right?
Right.
And the reason you don't have to pay for that is because I think that's an unnecessary expense, right? It keeps my overhead low. Keep your overhead as low as you can, unless you get a return on investment, unless you're investing in people and services. If it doesn't give you a return on investment, just scratch it off your list, because that'll eat your money and your time more than you ever know. Let me see. And the third thing I would say not to do is to not take investor money just because they're dangling a carrot, right? So you have this business idea, and even if you're not even thinking about investment, somebody says, it'd be a good, I would invest in your company. And so you start down this road, and before you know it, you've taken investor money either with somebody that you don't want to be in a relationship with, because an investor is an investor relationship. We spend so much time in the last F of our 5-part session talking about future, talking about investor relations. People think, oh, I take your money, that's the end of the relationship. When you take an investor's money, that's the start of the relationship. You need a plan for how to manage that, right? And so that's one of the things that we focus on. But so many people just start taking investor money, and they just out here doing it illegally, taking money from people they shouldn't. And it just becomes a whole mess, and it messes up your ability to raise capital in the future from investors. It really does. So, just because somebody dangling a carrot in your face doesn't mean you have to take it. Okay.
Right.
So those are the three things that I would say not to do. The three things to do. One is I'm always going to go back to building your team. Absolutely the number one reason that investors invest. If you do not have a team, no matter how good your idea is, they figure, well, there's nobody to execute it. So what's the point in having a Facebook if nobody is going to do the work? And so they just pass it on by. And as a matter of fact, I was advised a client who was looking to do a film fund here in Georgia, and they submitted me their pitch deck, and then they had all the good information about the founders in an appendix at the very end. I said, investors do not care about who you know in the industry. They don't care about you offering a 10x return. I mean, they care, but at the end of the day, they're looking for how are you going to get this done?
Right.
Because right now it's just a wish and a dream. So take all that information about your experience and the great team you built and put it in the first 3 slides.
Okay.
And watch how your reaction changes. So that's the first thing, is to build out a good team, and then, amplify that good team. Because if nobody knows you have a good team, it's worthless, right? The second thing is to build your client base and how you're going to acquire clients, because at the end of the day, that's how investors are going to get their money back. So you have to work on that as a plan to get revenue in, one, to get them in, but also after you have that investor money, you have to keep making money so you can give them a return back. So you have to have a plan. So working on how you're going to build your client base is the second thing that I am going to recommend. And then the third thing that I would recommend for founders to do is to continue to learn and exercise patience, which I know that is 2, but I'm going to combine them. Never, ever stop learning.
Right.
Whether it's free stuff, whether it's reaching out to your advisors, whether it's attending something, whether it is going on YouTube, because I go on YouTube. I have 4 degrees and 2 licenses. I'm still on YouTube all the time. YouTube University, that's where I have another degree from, because I'm constantly learning, right? So never stop learning, particularly about your industry or about just being a business owner in general. And then exercise patience, because this capital raising is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So every day you got to get up and hear this, sometimes the same no, the same excuses, visit the same people, ask for the same amount.
Right.
And you just have to surround yourself with, again, a positive team, right? That is going to believe in you. And when you call with them with that disappointing news, it's going to be able to say, that's okay. We'll try. Every day is new. Every single day is new. So you just have to keep going, one after the other. All you need is one yes. All you need is one yes. But you got to hear no's to get to that yes. So I would encourage founders to get to as many no's as possible, because every no is closer to a yes. And just keep going.
Yeah. That's a great point, to stay encouraged and to keep going. And like you said, every day that you're alive is an opportunity to try again. One of the points that you brought up was that not all money is good money. And I think that people need to sing that from the mountaintops, right? Because you hear so many stories of founders starting these companies, right? And now they've taken funds, they've taken on investors, and now they're being voted out of their own company, right? And so in your experience, what type of due diligence should founders do before that? Because it's exciting. You're like, I need money. Someone has offered me money. They believe in me. They believe in my mission in my company. I want to take these dollars. But what type of due diligence should they be doing before they just sign on the dotted line and take someone's check?
So if you have the funds, I am always going to encourage you to outsource and oversee because there are companies that do due diligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm in the mergers and acquisition space, even when I'm doing due diligence on a company that, a company that wants to acquire my client, I still have limits. I don't do forensic accounting, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge, right?
Right.
I have to outsource that because I'm not running any numbers. Even though I have an MBA, I don't deal with numbers like that, right? And so if you have the means, I would always say to outsource the due diligence. Because again, what I try to get founders to realize, especially during this capital raising process, is you can get caught so much in the trees, which is a common phrase that we say in the legal field. You can miss the forest because of the trees. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
get so bogged down in the details, you know, chasing down a piece of paper, which a lot of this
Right.
is. You're chasing down pieces of paper and you're not building your business.
Right.
Because what I see is you're so caught up in the trees and the details. By the time you accept that investor's money, your business is in shambles. You don't know what you're going to do
Mm-hmm.
next. You'll stop marketing. You'll stop client acquisition. And so it just puts you in a bad spot. So if you're able to, please outsource due diligence so you're not running down pieces of paper and not building your business. But if you cannot do that, then the due diligence that you really need to do is to make use of technology and doing backgrounds and asking for financial paperwork if you're acquiring a company, and then asking for maybe some information from the investor as far as what other things maybe are they invested in, because money is money, but this is really a partnership, so you want to know that the actual investor is somebody that you want to have a relationship with. I say if you do not want to be stuck with that investor in an elevator for 4 hours, like their personality just doesn't match with you,
Right.
do not accept their money. Because essentially, that's what you're asking for when you
Right.
take their money. Get stuck in the elevator with them for 4 hours. And if you couldn't survive, do not take their money. Believe me, you'll thank me later. And so you just need to do whatever research you can on the background of the individual or institutional investor. You need to, check out their board of directors or their teams. That should be publicly available information, or you can ask for it. You can always, sort of ask them for any sort of side agreements or things that they might have in place as far as their operating agreement, to see how they operate, or board notes, or
Mm-hmm.
you can ask for a variety of things depending on what the deal is. And it's important that you do the due diligence, which is why if you have the funds, I always say outsource it, because it can become. I've
Yeah.
been involved with a due diligence project for the last 2 weeks, and when I tell you, uh, every single day something comes up that we need. So it can really consume you.
Yeah. It can rob you of your time. And so if you
Yeah.
have the resources to outsource, then go ahead and do it. And I think that's great advice, because sometimes people, if you're super analytical like me, you want to know look at all line items. And you're right, it robs you of your time, because I've spent 2 hours looking at these line items when I could be focusing on marketing or focusing on something else. So those are really good points. And I appreciate how you've laid them out on, not allowing comparison to rob you of your joy, because what they're doing over there does not mean that it's going to work for you. Making sure that you are doing the due diligence, but if you can outsource it, great, because all money is not good money. Those are really, really good points. In addition to focusing on your team, like you said, put that team information, that story, in the first 3 slides of your deck. Amplify who you all are, what you all are doing, and how everyone works together, in addition to being coachable and always learning. That's a really good point, because I talked to another founder a few days ago who talked about one of the things that she does with her clients. She can quickly identify who's coachable, who's approachable, who's not stuck in their ways. And that's what helps kind of guide that success, is being willing to learn from those around you who have done it, or people who've done it or are successful in that area, and being encouraged. Because it is difficult when you're in a raising environment and you've had 10 no's, right? You're at 100 no's now, but like you said, all you need is that one yes for someone to come along and want to ride this journey with you. So where can the audience get involved in this coaching program?
Well, it's very simple. Just go to DarshunSpeaks.com. And on the front page, there's a button where you can either discuss services with me for free, or you can sign up, to be a client. And it sort of has a video that shows you sort of what the guide looks like, how long it takes, some of the things that we go through. We love the work that we do and happy to get started. But it really is that 6 to 12 months lead time. We do have a sort of a boot camp type one where is 1 month for 2,500, but that doesn't include the legal services because I can't do anything really in a month. But we do have some options on there if that is something that you want. But I always tell founders, the sooner the better to get started, because I will have founders that come to me when they need money and say, hey, I need to raise $100,000 in 2 weeks. That's not how this works, right? So just like the bank always tell you, come to me when you do not need the money. You're not in a crunch trying to raise funds, because it does take time. And plus, you just make better decisions. Think about somebody being stressed and under pressure. Going back to the bad money and the good money, you're much more likely to take the carrot that's dangled in front of you if you need the money. Come to me and we can make this coaching program, extend the full amount of time where you are calm, we can be thorough, and, you're not, as they always say, just stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So even if you don't you think you're going to raise money in the next year, if you go through the coaching program, if some opportunity does come up, now you beat the lead time and you don't have to go through the 6 to 12 month coaching program. You're ready to go.
Yeah. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. That's great. Okay, one more time. What's the website and where can they find you on your socials?
So it's www.DarshunSpeaks.com. So my first name, DARSHUN, Speaks, SPEAKS.com. And pretty much, if you follow me on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, even on TikTok, you can just search Darshun Speaks, whatever the URL is, /Darshun Speaks, and you'll find me. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So I have a huge following on there, and I post any and everything. Anytime there's anything about capital raising, I post it, even if it's grants and it has nothing to do with me. Like I posted something yesterday about a $10,000 grant from Alice for women-owned businesses. I posted on LinkedIn. So all you have to do is click on the little notification bell, and anytime I post something, it'll pop up on your feed. So I try to, crank out as much good content as I can.
That's great. So all of the information is available on her socials and you can visit the site. Again, I'm Diona Richards across all platforms, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn. And Darshun, it was great talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a good Friday, everyone.
Have a good Friday.